My husband left me to die because his childhood sweetheart had a hot flash. I never thought the night I almost died would be the night I truly woke up. The hospital room felt like an icebox, sterile and unforgiving. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with their cold, clinical hum as I lay there, my body a battlefield of tubes and wires. The IV needle in my left arm felt like ice water flowing through my veins, while the oxygen cannula made every breath taste like plastic. My abdomen throbbed with each heartbeat, the surgical site a constant reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. The cardiac monitor beeped in steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The only sound keeping me company in this sterile prison. My throat was raw from the breathing tube they'd removed hours earlier, and when I tried to speak, only a whisper emerged. Then I heard his footsteps in the hallway, that familiar heavy stride I'd known for 12 years. Eric appeared in the doorway, but instead of relief flooding his face, I saw him glancing distractedly at his phone, thumbs moving across the screen. "Eric?" My voice came out as barely a croak. He looked up, almost startled to see me awake. "Oh, hey, how are you feeling?" How was I feeling? I just had emergency surgery for internal bleeding after a car accident that nearly killed me, and he was asking like I'd stubbed my toe, like I almost died. I managed, trying to inject some gravity into my weak voice. "The doctor said if I'd gotten here 10 minutes later." "Right, yeah." He was already looking back at his phone. The blue light reflected off his face, making him look like a stranger. "Look, I have to go." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Go? Eric, the surgery." "Mara's not feeling well." He was already backing toward the door, pocketing his phone. "She's having a really bad hot flash. And you know how her hormones get." She called crying, and I promised I'd come over with some of those cooling pads she likes. A hot flash. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "Eric, I almost died tonight, and still." I gestured weakly at the machines surrounding me, at the blood pressure cuff that inflated every 15 minutes, at the catheter bag hanging beside the bed. That casual gesture that used to be endearing, but now felt like a slap. "Mara really needs me right now, you understand?" No, I didn't understand. I didn't understand how his childhood sweetheart's menopausal symptoms trumped his wife's brush with death. I didn't understand how 12 years of marriage could be dismissed for a woman who'd been hovering at the edges of our relationship like a persistent shadow. "Please don't leave me here alone," I whispered, hating how desperate I sounded. But he was already gone, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving me with only the mechanical symphony of monitors and the crushing weight of abandonment. 3 days later, I woke to harsh morning light filtering through the hospital blinds. The pain medication had been reduced and clarity was returning along with the physical discomfort. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman with gentle eyes, was checking my chart. "You gave us quite a scare," she said, adjusting my IV. "We nearly lost you on the table. Your blood pressure dropped to almost nothing. Another few minutes and—" She didn't need to finish. I could see it in her expression. "Where's my husband?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Dr. Martinez's pause said everything. "Has he not been by?" "He left the night of the surgery. Said his friend was having a hot flash." The doctor's eyebrows rose slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. "Well, recovery is often easier with family support, but you're a fighter. Your vitals have been steadily improving." After she left, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. 17 missed calls, none from Eric. Dozens of text messages from friends, colleagues, my sister in Denver. But from my husband of 12 years, silence. Then I saw Mara's message, sent just 2 hours ago. "Eric's been at my place taking care of me. This whole hormonal thing has been so rough. Hope you're doing okay." The heart emoji felt like mockery. I screenshotted the message, something telling me I'd need it later. That afternoon, my best friend Sarah burst through the door, carrying flowers and fury in equal measure. "Where the hell is Eric?" she demanded, setting the bouquet on the bedside table. "Taking care of Mara. Apparently, hot flashes are more serious than internal bleeding." Sarah's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disgust, rage. "Are you kidding me? Julia, you flatlined for 30 seconds during surgery. The nurse told me. You died for half a minute, and he's playing nursemaid to his emotional affair partner?" Emotional affair partner. The words I'd been too afraid to say out loud. "It's not an affair," I said weakly. though the words felt like lies on my tongue. Bullshit. Sarah pulled up a chair, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. Jules, I've watched this for years. The way she calls during our girls' nights, how she always has some crisis when you two have plans. Remember your anniversary dinner last year? I did remember. Mara's panic attack that required Eric's immediate attention, leaving me alone at the restaurant with 2 untouched steaks and a growing suspicion that I was the third wheel in my own marriage. I need proof, I said quietly. If I'm going to do anything about this, I need actual proof. Sarah squeezed my hand. Then we'll get it. 2 weeks after being discharged, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee that tasted like ash and staring at the business card Sarah had given me. Marcus Chen, private investigator, in simple black lettering. My hands shook as I dialed. Chen Investigations. Hi, I need to hire you to investigate my husband. There was a pause. I see. Can you come in today? It's better to discuss these matters in person. Marcus Chen's office was in a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and a matter-of-fact demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Tell me what's been happening, he said, pulling out a legal pad. I told him everything. Eric's absence during my medical crisis, Mara's constant presence in our marriage, the growing distance I'd felt for months. As I spoke, Marcus took notes without judgment. How long have you suspected an affair? He asked. I'm not sure it's physical, but emotionally, years maybe. Mrs. Harrison, in my experience, when someone chooses another person's minor discomfort over their spouse's life-threatening emergency, we're past emotional territory. He was right, and hearing it from a stranger somehow made it real. What do you need from me? I asked. Access to financial records, phone records if possible, and a timeline of suspicious behavior. I'll handle the rest. Marcus was thorough. Within 2 weeks, he'd compiled a dossier that made my stomach churn. We met at a coffee shop near my office, and he slid a manila folder across the table like evidence in a crime drama. Your husband and Mara have been having an affair for at least 8 months, he said without preamble, possibly longer. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, a weekend trip to Napa that he told you was a business conference. The photos were damning. Eric and Mara entering her apartment building together. Leaving a hotel at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sharing what was clearly an intimate dinner at Romano's, the restaurant where Eric and I had our first date. There's more, Marcus continued. Financial irregularities. Eric's been transferring money to Mara's accounts. Small amounts at first, but increasing over time, totaling about $40,000 over the past 6 months. My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. 40,000? It gets worse. Mara's been involved in some questionable business dealings, insurance fraud specifically. She's been claiming injuries from car accidents that never happened, then splitting the settlements with various accomplices. The room seemed to tilt, and Eric knows. Based on the evidence, he's not just aware, he's complicit. His signature is on several of the false insurance claims as a witness. I stared at the photos spread across the table. My husband's familiar face now belonging to a stranger. What do I do with this? Marcus leaned back in his chair. That depends on what you want. Divorce proceedings? Criminal charges? Or, he paused meaningfully, something more creative. That evening, I sat in my empty house. Eric had been staying at a friend's place for the past week, while I recovered, and made a list. Not a to-do list, but a reckoning. What I've lost. My health, almost permanently. My husband's loyalty. 12 years of marriage built on lies. $40,000 of our savings. My ability to trust my own instincts. What I have. Evidence of adultery and fraud. A successful career Eric never supported. Friends who actually care about my well-being. Fury that could fuel rockets. Nothing left to lose. I called Sarah first. I need your help, I said when she answered, and I need you to not ask questions until I'm done. Jules, what's going on? I'm going to destroy them, but I'm going to do it legally, strategically, and completely. There was a pause. Okay, what do you need? I need to rebuild myself first. Then I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Eric and Mara really are. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including myself. The marketing firm where I'd been coasting for years suddenly had my full attention and creativity. Within a month, I'd landed 2 major clients and secured a promotion that came with a significant salary increase. "Julia, this campaign for Meridian Corp is brilliant," my boss David said during our weekly meeting. "The client specifically requested that you lead their entire West Coast expansion." "I appreciate the confidence," I said, feeling genuinely proud for the first time in years. "I'd like to take on more strategic accounts if possible." "Absolutely. In fact, I've been meaning to discuss a senior vice president position that's opening up." While I was rebuilding my professional life, Marcus continued gathering evidence. Eric's calls became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Mara sent the occasional text, always carefully worded to seem friendly and concerned, never revealing the truth of her relationship with my husband. I saved every message. Meridian Corp's annual gala was the social event of the year in our industry. 500 of the city's business elite gathered at the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel. The kind of evening where deals were made over champagne and careers could be launched or destroyed with a single conversation. I spent 3 hours getting ready, choosing a midnight blue dress that hugged my figure. The one Eric had once said made me look too attention-seeking. Tonight, attention was exactly what I wanted. As I walked into the ballroom, conversations paused. I'd lost 20 pounds during my recovery, not from any diet, but from stress and determination. My hair, grown out during weeks of recovery, fell in waves down my back. I looked like a different person because I was one. "Julia," David appeared at my elbow, beaming. "You look stunning. Come, there are some people I want you to meet." As we moved through the crowd, I spotted them near the bar. Eric in his favorite navy suit, Mara in a red dress that was trying too hard. They were laughing at something, Eric's hand resting possessively on her lower back. The sight should have hurt. Instead, it filled me with cold satisfaction. "There's Eric," David noted, following my gaze. "I heard he's been having some troubles with his firm lately, losing clients." "Really?" I kept my voice neutral. "How unfortunate." The evening progressed beautifully. I mingled, charmed potential clients, and accepted congratulations on my recent successes. Several people commented on how radiant I looked, how confident I seemed. Eric noticed me around 9 o'clock. He approached during a lull in conversation, Mara trailing behind like an uncertain shadow. "Julia." His voice was carefully modulated, publicly appropriate. "You look good." "I feel good, Eric. Recovery suits me." Mara stepped forward, her smile brittle. "We've been so worried about you." Eric's been beside himself. The lie was so brazen, I almost admired it. "Has he? That's interesting. I wouldn't know. We haven't spoken in 3 weeks." Eric's jaw tightened. "We should talk. Privately." "Should we?" "Here, I thought you were too busy taking care of hot flashes to worry about your wife." Several people nearby turned to look, their expressions curious. Eric's face flushed. "Julia, don't make a scene." "A scene?" I smiled serenely. "Eric, I'm simply catching up with old friends. Speaking of which, David was just telling me about some irregularities in insurance claims that have been flagged by the state board. Apparently there's going to be a major investigation. Isn't that fascinating?" The color drained from Mara's face. Eric stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "What are you playing at?" "I'm not playing at anything. I'm living my life. You should try it. Living honestly, I mean." Before he could respond, the lights dimmed, and the CEO of Meridian Corp took the stage for the evening's presentation. What happened next wasn't planned for the gala. That would have been too dramatic, too obvious. Instead, I'd orchestrated something far more elegant. The following Monday, Marcus and I met with Detective Riley from the fraud division of the police department. We spread the evidence across her desk like a prosecution's closing argument. "This is comprehensive," Detective Riley said, studying the bank records. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 8 months for the financial crimes," Marcus replied. "The affair appears to have been ongoing for over a year." "Mrs. Harrison, I have to ask, what prompted you to investigate your husband?" "I thought about that night in the hospital, about Eric walking away while I lay dying. He showed me who he really was. I decided to believe him." Detective Riley smiled grimly. "We'll need you to press charges for the financial crimes. The insurance fraud will be handled separately, but your testimony about the missing money would be crucial." "When?" I asked. "We'll execute search warrants tomorrow morning. By noon, this will be very public." They arrested Eric at his office. Mara was taken into custody at her apartment, the search revealing evidence of multiple fraudulent claims and forged documents. The local business journal ran the story that afternoon. "Local business owner and associate charged in insurance fraud scheme." Eric's lawyer called within hours. Mrs. Harrison, my client would like to arrange a meeting to discuss a resolution. What kind of resolution? He's prepared to make a full financial restitution and discuss terms for an amicable divorce. I almost laughed. Tell him I'll meet him at Cafe Luna tomorrow at 2 o'clock. He can bring his girlfriend if she's not in jail. They were both there when I arrived, seated at a corner table like conspirators. Eric looked haggard, his usual confidence replaced by desperate calculation. Mara appeared smaller somehow, her red-rimmed eyes darting nervously around the cafe. I ordered a coffee and sat down across from them, feeling strangely calm. So, I said conversationally, how was jail? This isn't a joke, Julia. Eric's voice was tight, with barely controlled anger. You've destroyed our lives over what? Hurt feelings? Hurt feelings? I set down my cup carefully. Eric, you left me to die in a hospital so you could comfort your mistress through a hot flash. That's not hurt feelings. That's sociopathy. You're being dramatic. You weren't dying. I flatlined for 30 seconds during surgery. My heart stopped beating, Eric, while you were buying cooling pads for Mara's night sweats. Mara spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. We never meant for it to go this far. Which part? The affair? The fraud? Or abandoning me during a medical emergency? All of it, she said, tears starting to fall. It just happened. Nothing just happens. You make choices. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots of bank transfers, hotel receipts, fraudulent insurance claims. These were choices. $40,000 in choices. Eric's face went white. How did you? I hired a private investigator. Turns out, when you're meticulous about committing fraud, you leave a very clear paper trail. What do you want? Eric asked flatly. I want you to understand something. That night in the hospital, when you walked away, you didn't just abandon your wife. You abandoned any claim to mercy, understanding, or forgiveness. I almost died, Eric, and you chose her menopause symptoms over my life. I made a mistake. You made a choice. And now you get to live with the consequences. I stood to leave, then paused. Oh, and Eric? I'm keeping the house, and the car, and the savings account you didn't steal from. My lawyer will be in touch. The legal proceedings took 6 months. Eric pled guilty to fraud charges and received 2 years probation and community service. His business license was suspended, and the scandal made him radioactive in our professional circles. Mara wasn't as lucky. With multiple counts of insurance fraud and a history of similar schemes in other states, she received 18 months in minimum security prison. Our divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in March. Eric had to pay me substantial alimony and forfeit his claim to our house and most of our assets. His lawyer tried to argue for emotional distress damages in his favor, claiming I'd orchestrated his downfall. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at him over her glasses and said, Mr. Harrison, you abandoned your wife during a life-threatening medical emergency to tend to another woman's hot flash. The court finds your claims of emotional distress somewhat unconvincing. 1 year later, I was promoted to senior vice president at the firm. The Meridian Corp campaign had won 3 industry awards, and I'd been featured on the cover of Marketing Excellence magazine. I was reading the article in my new corner office when Sarah knocked on my door. How does it feel to be famous? She asked, settling into the leather chair across from my desk. Like I'm finally living my own life instead of apologizing for it. Any regrets? I considered the question seriously. About Eric? About exposing him? No. About not seeing who he really was sooner? Sometimes. You know he's working at his cousin's insurance agency now. Mara got out of prison last month. Are they together? Apparently. Your private investigator friends saw them at a Wendy's last week. Very romantic. I actually laughed at the image of Eric and Mara sharing chicken nuggets in a fast food restaurant. Their grand passion reduced to drive-through meals in a studio apartment. They deserve each other, I said. That evening, I had dinner with David and several colleagues to celebrate our latest client acquisition. As I walked to my car afterward, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Hello? Julia, it's me, Eric. I hadn't heard his voice in months. It sounded smaller somehow, defeated. What do you want, Eric? I wanted to apologize. For everything. For leaving you at the hospital, for the affair, for the money. All of it. I stood in the parking lot, city lights reflecting off my car's windshield, and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not satisfaction. Just a mild curiosity about why he was calling. "Okay," I said. "You've apologized. I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping maybe we could try again, start over." The audacity was breathtaking. "Eric, you left me to die so you could comfort your mistress through menopause. You stole $40,000 from our joint account. You committed fraud. What part of that suggests we should start over?" "I've changed. Prison. I mean, the probation and community service. It gave me time to think. About what I lost. About what we had. What we had was a marriage built on lies. What you lost was someone who loved you despite your flaws. What I gained was self-respect." "Julia, please. Eric, I need you to understand something. That night in the hospital changed everything. Not just because you left, but because it showed me who you really are. And who I really am. I'm not the woman who begs for scraps of her husband's attention anymore. I'm not the woman who tolerates being second to another woman's hot flashes. I'm someone who knows her worth. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me, Eric. You freed me. From a marriage that was slowly suffocating me. From a man who saw me as an obligation rather than a partner. From a life that was making me smaller every day. There was silence on the line. I'm successful now. I'm respected. I have friends who would actually visit me in the hospital. I have a life that belongs to me. Why would I trade that to go back to being your consolation prize? Because we were married for 12 years. That has to count for something. It does count. It counts as 12 years I spent learning to settle for less than I deserved. But I'm not that person anymore." I ended the call and blocked his number. I'm writing this from my new office, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. "The partnership offer came through this morning. My name will be on the company letterhead by next month. Last week I bought a house in the hills, with a view of the ocean. It's smaller than the home I shared with Eric, but it's entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every paint color, every book on the shelves reflects my choices, my tastes, my life. I date occasionally, good men who call when they say they will, who show up when it matters, who understand that a partner's medical emergency takes precedence over anyone's minor discomfort. Eric and Mara are still together, I'm told, though their relationship appears to be as troubled as you'd expect from two people who built their love on betrayal and fraud. He's working for his cousin's insurance agency, making a fraction of what he used to earn. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office, her criminal record making it difficult to find employment in her former field. Sometimes people ask if I feel vindicated, if their downfall brings me satisfaction. The honest answer is no. Their consequences aren't about me anymore. They're about the choices they made and continue to make. What brings me satisfaction is this. I am no longer the woman who lay dying in a hospital bed, watching her husband walk away for a hot flash. I am no longer the woman who made herself smaller to accommodate someone else's betrayal. I am the woman who rose from that sterile hospital bed and built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. I am the woman who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the best thing, because it forces you to discover who you really are when everything else is stripped away. And I discovered that I am stronger, smarter, and more resilient than I ever knew. The night I almost died was indeed the night I truly woke up. Some endings are actually beginnings. This one was mine.